Chapter 3, Starry Sky. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 3 of my What If Sonic Underground Was Canon story. If you're new to this series, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. When Sonia finally finishes taking photos of the Marble Zone murals, the triplets continue on to the next zone. On their way, Sonic explains to his siblings that the next zone, Springyard Zone, should be easy as, unlike Marble Zone, this is a zone-wide theme park. So they're not going to need to worry about traps or lava pools or anything like that. He also tells Sonia and Manic about some of the times that he, Cyrus, and Tails played there when they were little. When they crest a hill and are able to see the zone, however, what they find is nothing like the fun and colourful zone of Sonic's memories. Instead, what they see is a half-dismantled theme park. Badniks swarm the area, taking pieces of metal and other materials that could be used. For a moment, they stand there in silence, unable to speak as they see this place that had once been filled with laughter and joy reduced to scraps for Robotnik to use to make more machines. Then, the triplets turn to each other and, without uttering a word, they nod and begin to make their way into the zone. Working together, they destroy the badniks and shuttles that they come across. Hopefully, with the shuttles down, Butnik won't have the resources to come and collect the pieces of the park. At least, not for a good long while. It doesn't take them long to reach the end of the zone. As they're crossing a bridge made up of individual movable blocks, Manic notices a shadow passing over them and tackles his siblings out of the way. An Eggmobile slams into the block where the siblings just were with a bang. Sitting in the cockpit, Fang shouts at Trip, who's frantically fumbling with the controls. He shouts at her that she was supposed to hit them, not the bridge. He angrily orders her to get them back in the air before the triplets try to go for an attack. Trip does just that, lifting the block that they had landed on with them. Glaring, Fang smacks the girl upside the head, causing her helmet to spin around rapidly. She quickly grabs it and begins to right it while shakily apologizing, telling Fang that she'll put it back right away. Before she can, Fang presses a button on the panel, which causes the block to break apart, revealing the spike on the underside of the Eggmobile. Trip frantically asks if that was really necessary, pointing out that the park is already seriously damaged, and she doesn't feel good about making it worse. Fang snarls before giving the girl a swift kick, knocking her out of the Eggmobile. To himself, he grumbles about how useless she is and wondering why he puts up with her. His rant is cut off as a blue blur smashes right through the center of the Eggmobile. Sonic had taken advantage of the bounty hunters' distraction to get a running start, so when he used his super spin, he had enough momentum to smash right through the vehicle. Fang shouts in fury, demanding to know if the Hedgehog has any idea as to how much money these things cost. The Eggmobile begins to sputter and plummet to the ground as Fang attempts to pilot it in a retreat. All the while shouting how this is going to come out of Trip's paycheck and not his. Picking herself up off the ground, Trip runs after the Eggmobile, ignoring Sonia's calls for her to wait. Deciding that there's nothing more that they can do for the destroyed zone, the triplets continue on to the entrance of the next Chow Garden, which is cleverly disguised as another attraction. Walking through, they find themselves in Park Garden, which looks exactly like Springyard Zone is supposed to look like. They play to the statue and obtain the purple emerald. Labyrinth Zone is mostly uneventful, aside from Sonic expressing his immense hatred for the place, and his siblings discovering that he can't swim. After defeating Fang and Trip once again, they obtain the blue emerald from the Ruin Garden. It isn't long before they arrive at Starlight Zone, where, for once, they're not immediately confronted with badniks. Instead, they find a city surrounded on all sides by mountains and shrouded by a strange force. Buildings rise high into the air, while paved streets and highways stretch as far as the eye can see. All around them, Mobians rush about, some dressed in uniforms, while others look like they just escaped a fire or landslide. The ones in uniform are distributing food and blankets to those that look worse for wear. Looking around, Sonia asks if these are all the people that came from the other zones. Sonic grimaces, gently correcting his sister that there's nowhere near enough people for this to be all the people that were living in those zones. These are just the ones that made it out. Sonia looks around at the refugees surrounding her, her heart squeezing painfully. She can see a group of children huddled together on their own and wonders where their parents are. Wanting to lighten the mood, Manic asks why the place is called Starlight Zone since it doesn't seem very star-themed. Sonic explains that it's because it's the one place on the planet where you can see both north and south constellations in the sky. It's why the buildings are built so tall. Once, it was a popular vacation destination. Now it's one of the Resistance's primary safe stations for refugees and children of the Resistance, since the mountains and high buildings make the zone easy to defend. Sonia asks if that means it'll be easy for them to get the emerald then. Scratching the back of his head, Sonic tells her yes and no. He explains to his siblings that while they're not going to have to fight their way to it, it only opens at nighttime. So they're not going to be able to get inside until dark. He then shrugs and tells them that he doesn't know about them, but he's going to be helping out the relief crew. They look like they could use all the help they can get. He turns and begins to walk to the guy that seems to be in charge, his siblings close behind. Sometime later, Sonia is carrying some blankets to a section of refugees separate from her brothers when she spots a young sun-gazer lizard about her age in a cute red and yellow dress with gold-tipped orange and red shoes that perfectly match her scales. She's carrying a box of food that is far too big for her and looks like she's lost. Rushing over, she asks if the girl would like some help. The girl lets out a sigh of relief, thanking her for the offer and explaining that she has no idea what she's doing. She then asks if they've met somewhere before, as her voice sounds familiar. Sonia takes the box from her, revealing the girl's face and lavender eyes, which are now wide in shock. Holding the box with one arm, she answers her question with an "I don't think so," fighting back a giggle at the girl's reaction to seeing her strength. She hands the blankets to the sun-gazer while introducing herself as Sonia. The girl takes them with shaky hands and stutters out that she can call her Tori. Smiling warmly, Sonia says that it's very nice to meet her. With that, the two begin to work together to hand out blankets and food, and it soon becomes clear that Tori is very clumsy, often tripping over her own 2 feet. Every time, she frantically apologizes to Sonia or anyone around her, almost sounding scared, only to be surprised when Sonia asks if she's okay before encouraging her to keep trying, and to get a new pair of shoes in the near future. That last one confuses Tori, who asks why she would need new shoes. Smiling, Sonia explains that she can tell that her sleeves are slightly too big for her. They keep shifting when she walks, which is throwing off her balance and making her trip. She pulls out her writing set and scribbles down the name of a shop and an address, before handing it to Tori. Smiling, she tells her that this is the store she goes to, and they also do repairs and adjustments, since she'd hate her to lose the shoes she currently has. They match her scales perfectly and look so cute with her dress. Tori stares at her with wide eyes before she gives a small, shy smile and thanks her. Eventually, night falls and the triplets enter Shooting Star Garden. The garden is a beautiful field of white lilies with a canopy of stars above them. The moment they enter, a small purple chow with 2 curled horns and a pair of white and yellow wings comes barreling towards them. Sonic gives a slight oof as the little creature slams into his chest before quickly catching it before it can fall. Smiling softly at the cute little guy, Sonia asks if Sonic knows him. Sonic shakes his head. He's never seen this little guy before. Manic tilts his head curiously, asking why they think he was rushing around like that. The question is soon answered as a dark and neutral chow with sharp teeth approach the group, looking right at the chow in Sonic's arms. The little chow jumps fearfully, burying itself into Sonic's chest fur. In response, Sonic wraps his arms around the little chow tighter, angling his body to shield the little guy from the new pair. As he does so, Sonia and Manic step forward, placing themselves between the chow and Sonic, their height allowing them to loom over the other two. Spotting the 2 hedgehogs, the sharp-toothed chow look at each other before turning and hightailing it away. Seeing its bullies fleeing, the purple chow flies out of Sonic's arms with a happy cheer before hugging first Sonic, then Manic, then Sonia. Sonia holds the little guy in her arms, cooing over how cute he is. With that little drama settled, they begin to make their way over to the statue, the little chow following them the whole way. After going through the process of playing for the statue, they obtain the yellow emerald. They're about to take their leave when they notice that the little Chow is still following them. They all look at each other sadly. As much as they'd love to take the little guy with them, it's too dangerous. He's much safer here, where Robotnik can't get him. They say this to the little Chow, who looks at them with wet, pleading eyes. But they tell the little guy goodbye and walk through the portal. The little Chow floats there for a moment, staring at the portal with teary eyes. After a moment, he wipes his face, expression set in a determined frown, and flies through the portal. The next day, the triplets prepare to move on to the next zone. Before they leave, Sonia heads over to the relief office to see if she can find Tori. When she gets there, however, she's told that the girl hasn't come in yet today and no one knows where she's staying. Not wanting to leave without saying goodbye, Sonia writes a letter and leaves it with the man in charge to give to Tori when she arrives. With that, the triplets continue on to their final destination, the zone Sonic calls Mountain Zone. When they arrive, however, they discover exactly where all of the badniks and SWAT bots have been coming from. At least half of the mountain range has been covered in buildings of black and silver metal, having been turned into a base for the tyrant's attack on the once peaceful island. Entering the zone, they find a large sign reading, "Welcome to Scrap Brain Zone." Sonic huffs, saying that Scrap Brain is right. Only a lunatic like Rotundanik would even think of creating something like this. Manic is about to respond when his brother suddenly grabs his arm and yanks him back. Wincing at the pain the sudden jerk caused, Manic is about to ask what that was for when a sudden jet of flames roars behind him, right where he'd been a moment before. Sonia and Manic stare at the space with wide, terrified eyes, and Sonic tells them that Butnik has always had an unhinged architecture for his bases and factories. If they think the fire spitters make no sense, then he can't wait to see their reactions to the buzzsaws. Sonia blanches. Buzzsaws? Why would he put buzzsaws around the place where anyone can get hit by them? We've got a betting pool in the Freedom Fighters on that. The current favourites are that they're meant to be booby traps or that Fat Nick is just insane. Mindful of the various hazards, the siblings carefully make their way deeper and deeper into the mechanized zone. Sonic's experience with navigating such places saving them more than once. All the way, they keep their eyes peeled for any signs of the entrance to the Chow Garden, eventually finding themselves sneaking through the massive complex of interconnected buildings. After a few hours of this, they find themselves in a hall that doesn't seem to have any badniks or SWAT bots or fire spitters or any hazards of any kind. The siblings share a look of suspicion as Manic asks if anyone else is smelling a trap. As if it was waiting for that exact comment, a pair of force fields come down from the roof, blocking the siblings in. The sound of cackling laughter heralds the arrival of Fang, who approaches them with a smug smirk. Trip follows after him, her feet dragging across the floor as she looks anywhere but the triplets. Fang grins as he tells the siblings that it's been a fun chase, but it's the end of the line for them. With that, he pulls out a remote and hits the big red button. Instantly, the floor beneath the triplets opens up, sending the teens free-falling into the darkness below. Trip shifts as if about to run forward, her hand slightly raised as though she's about to reach out, but stops as the trio disappear within seconds, pulling back to instead grip her arm. Meanwhile, Sonic, Sonia, and Manic find themselves not falling into a pit of spikes or falling endlessly, but falling into a series of ruins that look like the ones in Labyrinth Zone. Only more white and grey. Sonic tells his siblings that he had no idea there were more of these ruins in the rest of the island. Looking at the crystals sticking out of the walls and roof, he comments that it does explain why the Chow Garden looks the way it does, though. Scratching the back of his head, Manic asks if Sonic realizes that this means they're going to have to go through water again. Sonic groans, telling him that he was trying not to think about that. Sonia huffs, telling them that standing around isn't getting them anywhere. Grabbing their arms, she begins to pull them along, telling Sonic that the sooner they move, the sooner they can find their way out, and Sonic won't have to deal with the water anymore. Surprisingly, it doesn't take them long at all to find a way out of the ruins, swiftly finding an entrance that the badniks are using to enter the ruins for excavation. Slipping through the entrance when the bots aren't looking, they find themselves in the same hallway they were in before, only this time they're on the side of the barrier that Fang and Trip were. Turning to the end of the hall, they see the bounty hunters in question at the far end. From the looks of it, Fang is yelling at Trip for something while the girl cowers, holding her helmet like a shield. The trio quickly approach, with Sonic asking if they really thought they could get rid of them that easily. Fang and Trip turn to them, shocked to see them alive and well. Fang growls, turning to Trip and telling her that this is her fault before ordering her to get into the next room. Flinching, Trip scrambles to do as she's told, while Fang follows. Not willing to let the two get away, the triplets follow after them, finding themselves in yet another hall. Only this one has suspicious round sections of the floor and ceiling and what looks like red light bulbs on each end of the hall. This suspicion is soon confirmed as one of the round sections of the floor suddenly rises up just as Manic is about to poke it with his shoe. The top slams into the roof, revealing a kind of capsule on a long metal pole with a thick metal roof. Fang smirks at the siblings, telling them that this is where their little story ends. He's gonna crush them with... He stops mid-speech, looking around, before snapping for Trip to stop messing this up and activate her crusher already. The girl's voice echoes from the roof, telling her superior that she can't figure out how. There's too many buttons. Fang groans, slapping his forehead as he shouts at her to press the yellow button on the left. There's a beep and the red lights flash before orbs of electricity form. Fang's eyes widen in panic as he shouts at her that that's the wrong button. He was talking about her other left. The Jerboa lets out a yelp of pain as two of the orbs collide with his capsule, while Trip slips out frantic apologies. Fang snarls at her to stop yapping and start smashing while he lowers his capsule back into the floor. A few moments later, one of the sections in the roof drops, revealing Trip in a capsule like Fang. Only when she drops, the triplets are nowhere near her. The triplets all look at the lizard in pity as Fang yells at her again. Maybe they could leave her out of this one and just hit Fang. With that thought in mind, the triplets begin to focus their efforts on the Jerboa, smacking his capsule every time he reveals himself. Trip's clumsiness combined with Fang's temper ends up making the battle quite easy. As every time they strike the capsule, Fang shouts and fumes at them rather than swiftly retreating back into the floor or ceiling, leaving him wide open for the electricity orbs produced by the red light bulbs, which Trip keeps activating on accident. Before long, the machine is beginning to malfunction, forcing the bounty hunters to retreat using an eggmobile. Shaking their heads, the triplets allow the duo to leave, focusing back on their task. Exiting the building complex, they find themselves at a section of the mountain that hasn't been fully mechanized yet. And, just a little ways off, is a little cave that Sonic recognizes. Entering it, they walk a little ways before finding an old minecart. Bowing dramatically, Sonic asks Sonia if the princess would like some help getting into her carriage. Sonia rolls her eyes, telling her brother that she thinks she can manage, before hoisting herself into it. She's soon followed by Manic, who simply jumps in. Sonic goes to the back of the cart and begins to push. When it seems to have gained enough momentum to keep going on its own, he jumps into the cart as well. Sonia clings to the sides of the cart while her brothers laugh and cheer, Manic calling this a killer ride. She's about to make comment when she notices the sparkles surrounding the cart, growing in number as it begins to go faster and faster. Spotting them too, Sonic tells his siblings to hold on tight. In a flash of light, the cart containing the triplets vanishes and reappears on a new set of tracks in a large crystal cave filled with chow. Sonia turns to Sonic, asking if this was the only method of getting here. Sonic shrugs, telling her that it's the only method he knows, but even if there were other ways, he would have picked this one anyway. From there, it's easy to obtain the grey, 6th, and final Chaos Emerald. Exiting the cave, the trio are suddenly struck with a thought. Now that they have the emeralds, what do they do with them? They weren't really given any info on what they'd need to do after getting them. Scratching the back of his head, Sonic suggests that, for now, they head back to Robotropolis and wait to see if they get contacted by that Oracle guy again. With no other ideas, Sonia and Manic agree, and they begin to make their way back to Green Hill Zone. Upon arrival at the zone, however, the Chaos Emeralds suddenly materialize, encircling the triplets. Feeling a strange pull, they each reach out to one of the gems. In a flash, they find themselves standing in a vast white void. They're just preparing to fight when a soft voice calls out to them. Turning around, they come face to face with a woman with purple quills and green eyes, wearing a long dress with a tiara atop her head. Sonic is the first to react, recognizing her from the photo that Chuck had shown him. Mother? Sonia and Manic look at Sonic before turning to stare at the woman with wide, watery eyes. Alina holds out her arms, inviting her children in for a hug, which they all accept readily. For a moment, they simply hold each other, basking in the warmth of their embrace. But, with a sigh that speaks of a soul-deep longing, Alina pulls back, looking her children in the eyes. She tells them that, as much as she cherishes this chance to see them, she's afraid it cannot last, and there's things that she needs to tell them before time is up. She directs their attention to a strange image floating in the air that shows light spreading all over South Island, starting from where the triplets stood with the Chaos Emeralds and expanding out, erasing all of Eggman's influence as it goes. Badniks and SWAT bots turn to dust as their animal power sources are left unharmed. Springyard Zone returned to its former beauty, and all of Scrap Brain vanishing as if it were never there to begin with. Alina tells her children that, while they have saved South Island, she is afraid that the other outer islands of Mobius are still in danger. The image changes to one that Sonic recognizes. A large lake with a small planet floating above it. Only this time, there's a chain linking it to a mountain that sits next to the lake. Alina tells her children that if they do not save Little Planet, then not only Mobius, but the whole world will be doomed to fall into Robotnik's hands. Turning back to her children, she gives them one final hug, telling them that she loves them. In another flash, the triplets find themselves back in Green Hill Zone. Before their eyes, the Chaos Emeralds lift into the sky before shooting away like many-coloured shooting stars. Turning to one another, they all nod, their mother's words echoing in their minds. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as the triplets arrive at Neville Lake and Sonic reunites with an old friend. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.